Hey y'all.
Get it out.
No, I'm keeping it. I'm definitely keeping it.
Oh, Lord.
I know
You
how to
know,
things.
it just feels different without a guest.
It does feel different. It's interesting. Well, as y'all can tell, we don't have a guest this time. It's just going to be Samra and I talking about some of our personal experiences that we kind of talked about and realized that this is a conversation that's not had a lot that we
Mhm.
have firsthand experience with and wanted to share and open up that discussion. So yeah, bear with us because it's not very planned or anything. It's very much just going to be a discussion. So
Yeah, we're just going with the flow.
yeah, we know generally what we want to talk about and we'll just see what happens.
All
Uh,
right.
but yeah, so
With that,
right. We feel like the basis of it has a lot to do with microaggressions, which for those of you who don't know what a microaggression is, both Samara and I have two different definitions for it, but basically the same thing. So my
oh,
definition of a microaggression is, and I Googled this definitely for a more accurate representation, but it's basically the everyday, slightly thinly veiled instances of racism. That's one form of microaggression. Samara, you want to give your definition?
yeah, let me here we go. So microaggressions are defined as the everyday, subtle, intentional, and oftentimes unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate some sort of bias toward historically marginalized groups. Um, and it goes on because it's a long definition. And it says the definition or the difference between microaggressions and overt discrimination or macroaggressions is that people who commit microaggressions might not even be aware of them. So,
Which
a
I
lot
feel
of
like,
times,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, a lot of times our society is inherently racist since its origins. So the fact that we've grown up, and it's a rebirth. Like, people are waking up to the racism that exists all around them, but we we've ju- it's we're ju- like it's not accepted, but because it was
Yeah.
like you said, a historical, um and I mean it's still happening today. It comes out in so many different ways that we sometimes can't see it. It's
Yeah,
just
like sometimes you
normal.
don't even realize it's happening like in the moment. And you think about it. It's one of those things you think about later and it's like, that was a little racist now that I think
Wow.
about it.
That's actually a great segue into uh, the conversation that we had that triggered this little Zoom meeting that we're having right now, because there were so many racist microaggressions that we experienced that, whether it be in elementary school, middle school, or even high school, um, I mean, even college,
I
like,
mean,
it's still
even
happening
college.
today.
Yeah.
But the difference is that now we have a name to put to these things that are happening to us. And when I was younger, and people were calling me an Oreo, people were telling me that I was pretty for a black girl, like grabbing chunks of my hair, like those types of things. I I mean, it felt weird, like I was being singled out, like I was a freaking zoo animal,
Mhm.
but I didn't know it was racist.
Right. I've faced similar things. Like you said, growing up in predominantly white situations or areas or however you'd like to call it, but not being the majority, which most of the time we're not the majority in most of those situations. So for someone like me and us who like don't even like you just don't even realize it until you talk to someone else who face the same things and realize what was actually happening to you. So for me, that didn't happen until I got to college and met you, who was someone else who had faced some of the same things. And, you know, growing up being like, oh, you're pretty for a Black girl, or you're well spoken for a Black girl, or, you know, the hair thing. I've gotten the hair thing a lot, which I think has a lot to do with, you know, how I even look at myself as a person. I think it has a lot to do with some of the anxieties that I've faced and body insecurity because of these things that are pointed out to you by, you know, someone who's not your race, just like thinking that it's kind of like complimentary when really, no, that's just racist and mean. And not realizing it. Huh?
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel special to hear that you're pretty for a type of person.
Right.
That in no way, it's like one of those backhanded compliments that it's like, would you appreciate if I said something like that to you, you know?
Exactly.
Can't you just say that I'm cute or pretty or whatever you're gonna say and just that's it, period?
Based on my own merit, just because, like, why does it have to come with, oh, and also you're Black? Like, but why? Why did that have to come into play here? And that happened a lot. And I think growing up in those types of situations where you didn't really know what to do, so you kind of, I know myself, I internalized a lot of those things. And I think, again, has to deal with a lot of the anxieties that I have, and some things that I've faced, and not really talking to anyone about it until recently, and like realizing it, and, you know, being reaffirmed, like, hey, like, no, you're pretty because you're pretty. Like, you're popping because you're popping, that type of thing. And you're smart because you work hard. And, you know, just the way you talk, that's just the way you talk. Like, who cares? So
like,
yeah, and like just never feeling, I guess, that you had a place or feeling accepted, because, you know, you face those microaggressions from people who are not your race. But then the other side of it is, you know, other Black individuals being like, oh, like, you talk too proper, or like not being Black enough to associate with them. So then you have this just identity crisis, which is hard.
It is hard. It's, you know, and now in the media, at least, we're seeing a lot more people of color on screen, but, you know, you go to school and you don't have an example kind of like to look up to, someone who looks like you, that you can be like, okay, I see myself represented here, and I can kind of take their lead, you know, when however they're responding to the situation is maybe how I could respond to this, or something like that. We didn't have those examples. And then you look, like, you go home and you turn the TV on, and it's more of like, it's extremely whitewashed, and there may be the token Black girl in the show, but she doesn't hang out with other Black people, and she is someone that would be labeled an Oreo, I'm sure. And so you're just kind of like, okay, I mean, I guess I just hang out with white people and I'm that one Black kid, you know, that's what's normal.
And, you know, I always try to have a diverse friend group, like, as much as possible. But, you know, still from people, like, it's most of the time it came from people I wasn't even friends with or like really that close to. Like, I dealt with it a lot, like being the one of the only Black girls on my drill team in high school. That was a really big thing. And I remember this clearly, someone who was on the track team at my high school being like, you know, like, we're all rooting for you because you're the one Black girl, and like, you're good and you're representing and all these other things. And like, at the time, like, I took it as a compliment, because I was like, wow, like, I am being accepted by my own community. Like, people see me. And, you know, like, but also there's that side of, well, like, you know, if I'm that, like, why aren't we friends? Like, why haven't you approached me before now? Why haven't, you know, we made those connections?
Yeah, that's interesting that they said we're all rooting for you.
Yeah, and I'm like, huh? Like, wait, what?
Okay.
All right.
art gallery. Like you could have could have
Right.
cheered me on, but it's fine. Thank you.
Right. And that's something you deal with growing up in a community where you are the minority. So
Heard that.
it was an everyday thing. It wasn't just like, every once in a while. Even like when I would put makeup on for maybe like a game, or just to wear to school just to be fun or whatever, and being like, oh, that shade like really looks good on your skin, and like
Interesting.
that wouldn't work for me, and it's like, thanks, I think.
Oh, yeah, that it wouldn't work on me. Like that's a comment that I mean that's like a frequently used one.
Right. And I feel like it's seen as such a compliment, but at the same time it could be taken as a microaggression, like thank you, but also why did we have to mention that? Like like
Yeah,
I feel like the comments
maybe
where it's
that
like,
too.
oh, this works really well for your skin tone. Cool. But when
Uh-huh.
you're intentionally like, oh, that color really looks good on your, like, just more, I don't know how to explain it. More intense.
When they're making it about your race instead of like the fact that you were wearing that shade of whatever makeup,
Right.
you
Like you
know?
can tell the difference in the two different scenarios. So even things like that growing up, and really, I feel like I didn't find my true identity or realize I was having a true like face that I was having an identity crisis until I got to college, which is why I'm
Wow.
every day thankful for our relationship and those friends that we did make our freshman year, because they had such an impact on me of like, Alana, like you rock, like, you don't have to, worry about all this outside noise happening. Like just focus on you and do what makes you happy, wear what you think makes you look good, and like all these different things. So yeah, that was, yeah, it's just something you deal with, and I feel like it's not talked about a lot.
Yeah, it's sad. It's really sad. And I hope that it's changing. I hope that because from what I hear from my younger cousins, like the way they tell me is like it's not cool to be mean anymore. So I don't maybe like things it seems like they're a lot more socially aware than we were. And obviously the internet can teach you so much about different cultures and what it's like to be oppressed, and it can be an eye-opening experience for so many people that I think that even the younger kids are getting it, like they are having full-on history lessons on TikTok.
Yeah.
So they got it. But when we were younger it just wasn't cool, like it wasn't cool to be woke like that.
Right. Yeah.
People feel picked on, and I totally understand being rejected by white friends and being rejected by black friends. It's like where what like
Where do I
what
fit?
yeah, and that's kind of tough because you end up I know it definitely affected my self-esteem because I was never like no one ever had a crush on me. Like that was such a rare experience that when it did happen, I was like, I was like, I I should like it shouldn't have been as big of a deal to me as it was, but it was because it just didn't happen. Like nobody likes the black girl in the group. Like these white boys want to be like they've been trained to be with this white girl, and that's just it's not in the cards for you. You're like the last one that anyone's going to look at. And so even if you are a beautiful human being, which we all are, like you can feel so just you can feel like worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I definitely feel that a lot. And, that kind of segues again into the conversation of being that token Black person who's supposed to know everything.
Oh.
And like know all his
Yeah.
friends,
Good
know all
point.
of this, know this history, when it's like, okay, but I wasn't raised in a situation where that happened to me. So like, for example, when I used to live in Texas, and so I learned Texas history. And once I moved to Birmingham for school, that's when it was a super eye-opening experience. And actually, to me, it was beautiful because I learned so much about the civil rights movement and everything that happened in Birmingham and all of the history here. Like, it's plentiful.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I'm always learning. But then there are those times where it's like, you know, I might not know something. And if I say it around certain people, like even certain Black people, it's like, oh, you don't know that? Like, how do you not know that? Like, ugh, like you're Black, you're supposed to know these things. And it's like, okay, but I wasn't raised in the same situation that you were. So why not, instead of criticizing me for that and putting me down for not knowing something, why don't you just teach me or
Educate.
educate? Like, isn't that the whole point?
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, you're wasting space at that point, you know. If you're just gonna hate on someone for not knowing, you know, like we're all learning, like it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we don't have the same upbringing, we all have different backgrounds. And so assuming that somebody like knows everything that you do, that's ignorant, right? Like that,
Right.
and that's not how we move forward.
Exactly.
Um, so being open and when you do know something, like being very willing to like tell someone and explain like in a nice way that they can understand, like there is power in that. And I think that that's how you change people's hearts at the end of the day. It's not by shutting them out or shaming them or making them feel bad about not knowing as much as you did.
Mm-hmm.
um like, you know,
Or
like get over
expecting it.
yourself.
Yeah, or like expecting it. Or like even, you know, that common saying like, oh, you're gonna get your Black card taken because you don't know this fact or haven't watched this movie or heard this music.
How
Like
many
what?
times has my Black card been taken? I'm not even Black at this point.
Right. It's like, what? Like like
There's so many people who are holding my Black card right now, and I don't think I'm ever getting it back, you know?
right. And it's like, no, reclaim it because that's you. That's just you. And those people, like, I get it's a joke. It's not, you know, but it's another form of a microaggression at the end of the day. Like, call a spade a spade.
Yeah, period. Because like if we're not 100% on everything, like then what's the point?
Right. And no one is. That's the thing. Like, yes, you may know more history than me, but I may know more of something else than you. Like, we're not perfect. We're constantly learning. We're human. Like, you know, just create this space of education instead of putting people down, I think is the main point. And, you know, I didn't really experience that again until I got to college. And it was actually last year when I went on a trip and we landed back in Birmingham Shuttlesworth Airport, and I had never been to a certain side of the airport where it explains the history of the name of the airport. And I was like, I was reading it and I was like, wow, that's so fascinating. Like, I never learned about that because, again, it's not something that's taught in all history books, let alone Texas history book. Like, you learn Texas history. Like, I learned about the Alamo. I did not learn extensively about the civil rights movement. Like, it was like Rosa Parks sat on the back of the bus and Martin Luther King gave his speech. That was about it.
Yeah, and that's
So,
problematic in so many ways right there. Like, how is that the extent of your civil rights education?
right, exactly. But so when I read that history and I was with some girlfriends and I was like, oh my gosh, y'all, like, did you, like, I was so excited to share this new information. Like, did y'all know the history of the name of this airport? And they're both from Birmingham and they were just looking like, yeah, like, we're surprised you don't know. And but instead of being like, oh, your Black card's taken away, or oh, you should have known this, one of
Yeah.
my friends was like, y'all, we have to understand that she learned Texas history. She didn't learn the same histories that we learned. So you know what? That's awesome. I'm happy that you learned that today and extended your knowledge of your history. So
I love when I learn something new, like on a day. My favorite expression is "you learn something new every day."
because you
So
really
anytime I
do.
learn something new, I'm like, I can use my expression. You know, like it's a
Right.
good day.
Yeah. And like you just get so excited about it. And it's
Yeah,
disheartening when people put you down because it just makes you feel like, well, what was the point?
Right. And now I don't even want to look it up.
Right, like now I'm just over it and I'm just gonna go in my hole and be alone.
Right, right, right. And we to keep this movement going, we really have to embrace everyone who wants to be a part of it and everyone who wants to learn and be a better person. Because Lord knows, like, you know, our government's not going to do it for us.
It's not. And if you're waiting on that, you'll be waiting a very, very long time. Like, who knows how,
Possibly forever.
right, possibly forever at this rate. But there is a lot of positive change that's happening. I will say that, and it is really cool to be growing up in a time where I'll be able to tell my kids about this.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? We will be in the history books soon enough.
Right. And even if it's not, make my own history book. Listen, this is what
Yeah,
happened.
just go on my social media feed.
Right. This is what happened. And this is what mommy went through in 2020. It was a crapshoot. But here's all the good things that happened. And here's all the history that was made. And you know what I mean?
Right. Hopefully, like, look at all the positive change that came out of this terrible year.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, everybody keeps saying it's going to be a terrible year and 2020 is just the worst and throw the whole year away. When I think 2020 needed to happen. 2020, like the way it's been happening, and a lot of people have been like 2020 vision, like it's opening our eyes to so many problems in society that we no longer are just going to accept and need some change, and it has to happen. It just has to. There's no getting out of it. There's no sleeping under the rug.
Sleeping. Oh, I
Oh!
was yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I don't know. I just like now I'm thinking about the fact that you were supposed to represent Black people on your dance team in high school, and like what a large ask that is of a high school student who's just in an extracurricular trying to do her thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it turns into when you're Black in white dominated societies. You turn into the token, like you just do. Like there's nothing you end up representing the whole race, and it's exhausting sometimes to be the person that has to input like what is the black voice, like what is she thinking in this situation, or we have to respect, or we have to be like more sensitive or walk on eggshells because there's this person in the room right now and she might take offense to it because she's a minority or whatever. Like,
yeah, or in some cases just not even thinking about that and doing or saying it anyway. That happened more often than not. And we had what's it called, headshots taken every year for that year's team, and I just looked from the start of that team to when I was there and counted how many Black people had been on the team, and I maybe got to 20, maybe.
that's really crazy.
And these were team sizes. By the time I was on the team, it was about close to 55 to 60 girls on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of maybe 3 other Black girls.
Oh,
To give you
wow.
a number ratio of how
Wow.
big a deal it
Okay.
was.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective because I was thinking it was maybe like 12 girls. So I was like, okay, like a third or a quarter maybe. Wow. That is a huge, that's really wild to me. That's really
Yeah.
wild.
And it's just because, I was a dancer, and that's just what I did. And it just so happened that, I was like you said, I was the representation of that. And it was a lot. I'm not going to lie that it wasn't. But, I made some really great friends on that team who were woke enough to recognize something like that and call it what it was and be there for me. So
Okay.
that was beautiful. And for those friends, I'm thankful for them every day. Like, I'm still friends with them. But there were some people who weren't like that. And, and sometimes I wanted to be friends with them just to try to fit in, when really it's like, I could have lived without that. Not saying that they're horrible people or anything like that or discrediting them at all, but
Yeah. Like there's some people that just aren't meant to be in your life, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I think in this conversation, our main point is educate instead of putting people down about what they don't know, and
Mhm.
just
And
being more
hopefully we
accepting.
can, well, yeah. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, hopefully we can be, I, f- I feel like this is a community, hopefully, where people feel safe and accepted.
Mhm.
But hopefully we can continue to be stewards of what we're saying by, inviting more people on the show, talking to people of different backgrounds and cultures, and just, I don't know, like keep up the good fight.
Right. Exactly. That is exactly what we want to do with this. I think from the beginning, that was one of our main missions. Like, we wanted this to be a communal space for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how you identify yourself. Like, this is, like you said, a safe space. So, and I think moments like this where we're being vulnerable and not holding back and being completely transparent to situations that affected us, that could affect somebody, could be affecting or have affected somebody else in our community. Like, we are here for you guys.
Mhm.
We are here to have those conversations. We want to spark those conversations. And Samra, you can tell where I'm going with this. You can email us at shewellreadqa@gmail.com, or you can follow us on all of our social media. We're everywhere. I don't think
DM
there's a social
us.
media that we're not on.
Yeah.
And we actually specifically have a Facebook group for conversations like this one. And, obviously about the books that we're covering in these seasons and just different topics and conversations. We want that to be a safe place where people can come and speak their minds and not be bashed, not be, just don't be hurtful. Think about what
Mm,
you're saying before you say it. I think is
right.
really big. And just just building this community and seeing where it goes. So yeah.
Yeah. That's the one.
That's the one. So with that, I think that was pretty much all we had to say. Samara, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, yeah. Correct.
Hopefully hopefully someone found this helpful today, and this encouraged someone to just be you, and who you are is okay, and who you're growing to be is even better.
Oh, yes. Speak it, manifest it.
Manifest it. Yes, absolutely. And with that, we have one more episode in this series that we will be releasing, and then it's back to releasing our podcast episodes. You can follow us, you can find us anywhere on any podcasting platform to listen to,
Spotify,
yeah.
Apple Music, Apple Podcast.
Have a bike. There you go. And hopefully in the future we can have more.
Kind of. You
uh,
can low-key find us on SoundCloud.
Loki, right?
Low-key.
But hopefully in the future we can have more conversations like this with more people, and provide resources. We're always looking for different resources to plug for our audience. So if you have anything, please feel free to DM us or shoot us an email. Again, that's shewellreadqa@gmail.com.
One more time for the
Just
one
one
time.
more time. It couldn't hurt. And with that, we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.